Hello, everybody. How you doing? I hope this video is a little better than last time. I fixed the camera, I think. The lighting might not be great, but I think the camera should be better this time. Anyway, this won't be very long, though I always say that. I want to touch base about the trustee because a friend of mine did a call with the trustee yesterday, and I have a little info for you guys. So the good news is nothing's changed. The trustee has reiterated that when the funding agreement comes together, which it should come together hopefully in the next few weeks, he was not committing to a specific time frame, but he will put out a press release with the terms of the funding, and every holder, no matter how small, will be able to participate pro rata with the funding. And you should have something between 30 and 90 days to respond to whatever the terms are to decide whether you want to participate. The other interesting thing I have to tell everybody is he put out a number for how much money the Sanofi funding was, and the way that worked was small investors were required to put up all the money up front, an estimate of what the cost would be, and the larger investors had quarterly capital calls. But the total amount of money they estimated they needed for lawyers and other expenses was $14 million. And that litigation took 3 full years. I think the lawyer was also paid a contingent consideration at the end from the proceeds. But if this were, he did not say this is the case, by the way, so there's no numbers that were thrown out. But if this was also going to be in the $14 or $15 million range, that would be just 2 cents per CVR you'd have to put up front to keep yourself from losing, 20, 25% of the proceeds if this does get settled one day. So clearly it's a no-brainer to participate pro rata if we get the opportunity to do so, which we will. He also said that they are not really in much contact with Bristol, though a lot of the phone call, I guess, was privileged, and we don't really know the extent of the back and forth between the trustee and Bristol, but it's safe to say that you shouldn't expect a settlement anytime soon. Bristol's definitely not going down that path right now. What else did he say? He does not know yet how it's going to work from a payment perspective one day if we do get paid on this. DTC, I don't know if I'm using the acronym correctly, whatever the company is that has the records of holders, they have records of the holders for BMYRT, and the last day that they have as a record, I wrote this down somewhere, was I think January 18th, something like that. And now there's no record anymore, of course, but they have the record as of January 18th. He has no idea how it's going to work for funds that are trading this right now. The trustee has no record of these trades happening. So it's going to be probably on the burden of the buyer and seller to have side contracts and get paid. As far as how you're going to get paid, whether it'll be automatically in your account or you'll have to show proof of ownership or what have you, he says that's something they're going to have to work through in the future. It's not currently on their priority list, but I'm not concerned at all about us being able to prove our ownership or whether or not that's going to be a hassle for somebody asked me they're not American. I think they hold this in an overseas account and they're worried about the logistics of that. I can't imagine why you're going to have any problems with litigation proceeds versus someone that's domestic. So I'm just not worried about that. What else would he knows he's speaking to people every day, lots of people, though I guess he never returned any of my emails. And he knows that holders are anxious and they want answers. And he's going to be as transparent as he can and going to get as much stuff out as he can. As you know, there's a working group of virtually half of the shareholders, the largest 6 or 8 shareholders, which make up about half the outstanding shares. And they are working for free to come up with the structure of the funding agreement, to help pick attorneys and come up with all, just the basic working structure going forward. and nothing that they're going to be doing is going to put you at a disadvantage because you have the right to subscribe. Oh, that's something I wanted to say. So I was curious if you could oversubscribe. So usually in a situation like this, let's say only 60% of the people decide to fund litigation, the other 40% has to be funded by somebody. Clearly, it's a very good proposition. Put up 2 cents and potentially make 50 cents if you get 20% of the proceeds, or even more. It could be $1. And you're going to make more money off of the proceeds litigation than you will if your actual CVR from an IRR perspective. He said with the Sanofi situation, the small holders were not able to oversubscribe. They were able to just fund their pro rata, and then the larger holders are the ones that oversubscribe to cover it. So unfortunately, we won't be able to do that, but that's not a big deal. That won't cost you anything. You just won't make any money off of it. And I don't know anything else regarding timing, about if or when there'll be a lawsuit. Unfortunately, Bristol has every incentive to take a long time here, because I've talked about this many times in the previous videos, but the bid ask between what Bristol would pay and what the funds probably want is probably a mile wide. And Bristol knows that time is on their side and not on the side of the hedge funds, as the longer this takes, the worse the IRR is. So, they're just going to slow play this, I think, as much as they can. And I would be shocked if we get a resolution even this year. But let's first see what happens with Idacel. I don't think Idacel is as important as Lysocell was, as mentioned by Glenn on Twitter. They don't even have a diligence efforts clause anymore because the CVR agreement is terminated. So if Idacel doesn't get approved on time, they weren't under any responsibility to try to make the deadline of 3/31 anymore. So I'm not super concerned there. I also think that if they miss 3/31 as a result of COVID, you have the exact same argument that you have with Lysocell, which is that the RTF, aka also the major amendment with Lysocell, caused a multi-month delay. And then you also have the COVID factor, which I think will actually play out well in court, even though there was no force majeure clause. So yeah, that's where we are. Any questions, guys? Let's see what we got here. I have to imagine BMY's lawyers are among the best of the risks there in the following. After BMY bought Celgene, a judge boosted the award for patent infringement. Yeah, I mean, every big corporation has great lawyers, and 14 million plus a 10 or 15 or 20 million contingent consideration on our side will buy you some really good lawyers. So I'm not concerned about us not having great lawyers as well. Not if they actually matter at this point, but have you learned anything that changes your view on the resolution value? So I know as much as you guys know about this stuff. There's only been one scenario that this has ever happened before, which is Sanofi, and I think this is very different. It's my belief that this will never go to trial. No chance. I don't think Bristol Myers will ever take the risk of $9. So if it's not going to go to trial, that means it should settle in the next 3 or 4 years. And if it's going to settle the next 3 or 4 years, it'll come down to which side thinks they have the better case, obviously, to get to whatever price point they're going to get to. And we'll learn a lot more about how New York law looks at COVID situations. I think I talked about this in a previous video, but there was a really interesting article about how the lack of a force majeure clause actually helps us here with New York law, because the way New York law has been considering cases that have come forward is if they look at an impossibility clause. So even if it's not in there, if the act of the contract is impossible to fulfill, then New York State has been taking into consideration that with deadlines. So you can make an argument that it was impossible for this to be approved by 12/31 because the FDA stopped inspecting, and that was not normal or expected in the formation of this contract, for instance. But we'll have to see how those things play out. My band is 50 cents to $5. 50 cents to $5, 1 year to 3 years, and I have a high probability that we get something. But it could be 50 cents in 3 years from now, if that's what it takes for Bristol Myers to make this go away right before trial, and if the hedge funds don't think that they have a great case. I haven't marked it 0 in my head. and it's out of our accounts. And obviously I owned a lot of shares and it was a big percentage of my portfolio. So a recovery would be nice, any recovery, but I would be disappointed if it was less than $2. How do I find a good dentist? You have to use Groupon. I need more people to be using Groupon to get that stock back up. You're welcome. All right, there's no reason to make this long. I just wanted to touch base with that so that people can not stress about the trustee and about the pro rata funding and about the shares not in your account. All these things are understood by the trustee, and it will be fine. Brian, just send me an @ anybody that wants me to accept their follow, just @ me. And if you've tried to follow me in the past, please block me, unblock me, and then request the follow. Okay, it's the only way I can see your follow. All of pharma seems weak, but this CVR seems like a massive head on stock. You know, that's a narrative out there that they want the overhang gone. I think that's probably not likely. And I think that we know for a fact that from the trustee that they're not taking this seriously right now. So look, I think they would settle tomorrow for $1 if they could, but there's no way that the major hedge fund holders would settle for $1 tomorrow. So you have this huge bridge between the bid and the ask, and it's going to remain that way until we get much farther along in this process. All right. Well, look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. Take care. Adios. Hasta luego.